Are we
Yes, we
airing
are.
this or not? I don't even know
Yeah.
anymore.
Counselor Winograd, yes, we are live and you are all set and ready to go.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we'll open the meeting. This is Public Works, Facilities and Sustainability Committee. And I'm Ben Winograd, Chair. So we'll open the meeting, I'll call to order and approval of minutes. I'll take a motion on that.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I was going to second, but I'm going to ask with the necessary corrections. And I'm sorry that I'm just jumping on, but I did notice there were a few corrections. So those, just a few typos can be corrected.
Okay. And if you want to note those now or send those in later, whichever.
I can send those in. I'll send them in after.
Thank you
after the
for
meeting.
thank you for that. I'll note that at one point they were quite long minutes actually. Nice job on that. I did note at one point there was a question as to whether Mark or Carol had asked a question. Between the two of you, you can take credit for the question or not
If it's a really good question, I ask
Right.
it. If it's not such a good question, Carol, you want to take that one?
No worries.
No, I don't even actually know what you're referring to. Which question am I missed that.
Oh no, there was a let me see. In the notes on
It might have been on page 2 or 3.
yeah, it says
On page 2 of 6.
It's on page 2.
Where it says, I think Mark may have asked a question.
Right.
Yeah, it was about the pilot, I think with the PAC senior citizens. But I do have it noted, so I can send that in.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, you may remember in that meeting we lost the streaming about a minute or two in.
Okay.
And we had to provide because of that, had to do the detailed minutes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Normally they're not in this much detail.
I did wonder about that. Very good.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that explanation. And we'll consider the minutes as with corrections to be noted when convenient. We'll consider that approved. And then next on the agenda, we have an update on Material Solutions Center. And John, it looks like quite a good report there. What's new for us?
All right, Ben, thank you, John Phillips, Director of Public Works. I did present there's a PowerPoint on there. I'm only going to review, for the purpose of this meeting, I'm going to just review the first 5 pages because after the appendix is more just good background information and educational information for yourselves to keep on hand for future questions or when you get an opportunity to just read something to refer back to. So I'm going to attempt to share the PowerPoint, so I can open it up. Let's see if I can make it a whole screen. It should be whole screen now, right?
That looks good.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do I click pages here, though? Okay, so the agenda, just again, over the next the whole packet is reasons for the Material Solutions Center, which better known as the MSC. The goals and objectives of the site are, and we're getting closer on discussing the operations and management of the site with our partnership that we found through the RFP process. And then I'll go over some ongoing operation and operational timelines, the permitting, the leaf collection program that's currently going on, the winter shutdown that's coming soon, and then obviously termination of the existing partnership. So again, just to recap for the reasons for the MSC, again, the needs is to address the ongoing changes of Connecticut's waste landscape. I think we're all well aware, I've talked to it in length, that we are the Connecticut's waste landscape is changing right now in front of us, and in the future years, there's a lot of nothing consistent and a lot of unknowns. So the Material Solutions Center provides us that resiliency to manage the town's waste first and opens up opportunities for regional waste management programs. So the regulatory requirement when you develop any landfill, our landfill is actually an unpermitted landfill and has never been capped. So in accordance with the Connecticut State Agencies, RCSA, sections 22A-209-13, we're required to cap it to develop the site. It's actually something we probably should have done even with the current activities going on there, but it's just an activity that's just never occurred. So we're actually following through on that long-term issue. We're changing from a processing area to material transfer. So that requires a different types of permits. We won't be processing on site anymore. I gave an explanation of the processing that happens on there when we did the site visit back in August. We won't be processing materials on there, and not processing there is actually better for the environmental impact that the activities that happen on there. I'm working on that landfill. So the end of our O&M agreement with Supreme is actually approaching. We're only on a year-to-year contract with them since we started. This is year 7 of a 5-year contract. Supreme did not respond to the RFP that was issued in November 2020. So we knew then that we were going to be sunsetting at some point, and that sunset is happening in 2023. And obviously, with the topics that I talked about before about the waste management landscape, the need to set priorities for the next 30 years is here and now, and this is the opportunity to redevelop the landfill site. So transferring the waste management strategies, again, changing waste from a waste disposal landscape material and changing waste disposal landscape to drive down our MSW, which is our material solid waste, and expand diversion strategies. Doing this at this site will open up those opportunities for us to manage our waste in a more comprehensive and a more diversionary way for reducing the overall materials, your material solid, municipal solid waste. The site use and demands is obviously the site, which I explained back in August. We need it for supporting expanded DPW initiatives and engineering projects. And you saw some of the activities going on there now that we need to continue to use the site for. Leaf waste processing and composting, that's the stuff that we'll only be able to maintain town-produced landscape materials, public works access only. We will be getting out of the commercial side. And then obviously we need to be, we're using this site for preparedness, our ability to maintain growing DPW demands and servicing the town's infrastructure. So the overall goals is providing the Material Solutions Center supporting our ability to manage current and future recycling streams. Again, developing new waste management strategies, supporting the infrastructure of town and public works spaces, improving operational resiliency when it comes to our material solid waste. And ultimately, with a public-private partnership, we hope to limit the fiscal impacts in developing the site. Again, a key piece of needing this site is provide public works with a laydown space for emergency operations. Again, the key there is not having Yukon available to us, which we've used historically for catastrophic storm damage, using it for snow dump, and then other seasonal aggregate waste storage and seasonal landscape waste is obviously a demand for the site ongoing and every year. And also, we also want to move forward and implement a fuel station. Again, so we need additional property so we can bring in a fuel station for daily operations as well as emergency operations. So the timelines of everything that is really going into this, we did submit in October our new permit applications and the permit to close the landfill, cap and close it under the state regulations. And we're also applying for transfer station permits that need to be assigned to the town due to the outgoing operation and maintenance agreement that we have with Supreme. The fall leaf collection program is business as usual. So we're going to go around, we're collecting leaves as usual this fall. Our contractors who are collecting leaves and servicing our residents are able to use the facility this year and will continue to use it for this year. The O&M agreement that we have with Supreme, we will be sending them, we have sent them a termination letter. early termination letter. It does expire anyways in September 1st of 2023, but we're looking to end that in the spring so we can start the capping process. And so we're following the guidelines of our contract with them to give them notice that we need this facility a little earlier. So there will be a reaction to this action by closing and terminating the contract with Supreme. This will be the last season that we take commercial materials. After 12/31 of 22, December 31st of this year, commercial material will no longer come onto the site. Supreme won't accept commercial material. Now, typically the leaf season's already done by then. We're no longer taking leaves for free, if you would, at that time, but any for materials for fees that would come in there on the market rate, chunk wood, things like that, it won't be accepted anymore. We need that time frame with Supreme so they can start managing down and processing whatever material they've collected throughout this fall. And that could take us several months to clear the site of all the material that they've brought onto the site. So the contractors that no longer will come and use the West Hartford facility with Supreme services that they provide them, there are two private facility options they can utilize. There's one in Farmington on Colts Highway and one on Bloomfield on Dudley Road. And as of right now, the facility in Bloomfield is offering free disposal. So that's a 2022 price. I'm not sure if market rate will drive that and change that for next year, but I know they're accepting leaves just like we do for free from commercial contractors. So unlike 30 years ago, or even just 10 or 15 years ago, those options weren't available to the local landscapers, but that market has expanded to very viable and close proximity to West Hartford. So we feel that they'll be able to absorb all the commercial activity that we'll be displacing once we stop our commercial activity. Normal winter shutdown, usually between January and March, there's limited activity anyways, besides it really gets random residential customer activity. People still like to bring recyclables in. We don't usually typically take a lot of organic waste. We more take the other diversionary products like mattresses, e-waste, and things like that. The front end of the house, the recycling center, will remain open throughout that time frame as we typically do, accepting all those wastes. And then hopefully by April 2023, we'll be in line with our permits from DEP and start the capping process of our unclosed landfill. That's it in general. Again, after the appendix, there's just background of current days, site challenges, other topics that we've talked about in length, and I just leave that to you for reference. Any questions on a current update? Again, the biggest changes since we last met is that we've actually started now submitting our permits to DEP, and that this fall will be the last activity of any commercial activity in terms of yard waste or chunk wood acceptance.
Right. Thank you, John, very much. It's a good report, and congratulations on continued progress on that. Why don't we hold off questions unless anybody has a question about that specific timeline until after your update, so we can all get all the questions into you at one time.
I'm trying to figure out how to shut off the share, so bear with me. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Oh, Ben, I had a question, but I'll wait.
Yeah, why don't we hold it all together for John?
No problem.
That'll be easier. Thank you.
Gerard, how do I open up the screen again? I'm having a problem.
Hi, John. So if you hover your mouse over the top, like orange drop down box should fall, and it will give you the option to stop sharing. All the way on top of your screen. All the way, like, there you go.
There you go. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sorry about that technical delay.
No problem. Thank you, John. We'll move over into our staff report. And first up is and for each of these, we do have written reports that are online if anybody wants to read them, but I'll let the authors give us the summary. So facilities update. Robert, you're up.
Hi, Bob Palmer, Director of Plant and Facility Services. Our daily operations, buildings are performing well as usual, so nothing major encountered. We have migrated from air conditioning to heat. Typically that happens around Columbus Day, but with the increased fresh air that we've been doing in our buildings, that went a little bit earlier. As some buildings went as early as late September, and some went a week or two later than that. So this is a little bit different for us the last few years, still with dealing with the COVID and the increased ventilation rates, making things a little bit different. So I think everybody has had the opportunity to participate in a meeting and presentation by Tecton regarding the new Elmwood Community Center. So at this point, we're done with public meetings, and the advisory committee has completed its work as well. So now the architects are working on the final report, which they will present to town council on December 13th. Again, this is the feasibility study. This is not the final product. This is kind of evaluating what's best for that site, and giving you recommendations for your consideration. So as part of that, they will develop some cost estimates for the different options that we've been exploring. It's been a very vibrant and interactive process with the public and the advisory committee. So there's been a lot of good information, a lot of sharing. Some really great ideas have come out. So I think it's been a very good process. And, you know, again, even this completes the feasibility study. As we go through the design process, we'll go through that whole process a little bit more with public outreach, because there'll be zoning requirements and that type of thing for whatever we decide to do with that facility. So moving on to capital projects. So we are continuing to see supply chain labor shortages, and recently our bid prices have been coming in terribly high. So with substantial delays on equipment. So it's a real struggle right now. I'm sure that some of you have heard of some of our bids. I mean, basically anything with HVAC is basically double in price of what we estimated a year to two ago. So we're adjusting our projects accordingly and adjusting schedules accordingly, trying to stay in budget and to prioritize what's important and move those forward. So the capital project process this year is going to be a little bit interesting to see how we kind of balance all that out. But we are seeing substantial price increases. We're seeing significant delays in equipment as well. So HVAC equipment, switchgear, electrical switchgear, some other types of components, doors and windows and that type of thing, taking a very long time. Electrical switchgear, when we started we've been working on the elementary fresh air projects. When we started the design process 6 or 8 months ago, it was about 40 weeks. Now they're telling us 96 weeks for those type of materials. So it's fluctuating. It's all over the place. It's a really frustrating situation. So, but we'll continue to forge ahead and see how we can do. So projects that we're currently working on with the town is the animal control facility. Even though we are contemplating the purchase of that additional property across from DPW on Brixton Street, we are continuing with the design process to an extent so that we can be ready to go should we purchase that property as we're planning on, and be able to relocate there to help out John's plans. Public safety facilities assessment. We went through an RFP process to select a team to perform that assessment. These are typically architectural teams with mechanical engineering folks. We ended up selecting Tecton, who's also doing the Elmwood Community Center. So though it's a completely different team of people, none of the people that are working on the Elmwood project are working on this public safety facilities assessment. They really stood out. They have a whole team dedicated to public safety facilities within their organization. So they have lots of experience. So the committee that had selected them was very impressed with their qualifications and their experiences. So it's going to be a good process. We'll be starting that in the next month or so, and I'll continue to provide updates to this committee. So DPW partial roof replacement, we are currently out to bid right now for that project. as long as the weather holds off the way it's been going, we should be able to finish that before the heavy winter comes in. Townwide generators, as you recall, we've begun a program to install generators at some of our key facilities. The first phase is going to include Town Hall, Conard High School, Hall High School, and Fire Station number 1. So we've selected an engineering firm, and we're beginning that process right now. So again, we're going to see very long lead times on that equipment. So the actual installation dates are going to be a ways out, but we'll continue to move forward and see how that goes. So for the Board of Ed projects, we're still King Philip Auditorium. We're waiting on, this was a project that we started quite a while ago, but we're still waiting on HVAC equipment to arrive. Hopefully it's going to be here in December. We've been working on the design of fresh air and ventilation for Duffy and Webster Hill. We have 2 different architectural and engineering firms we're working with doing each building. Based on their cost estimates that we got about a month and a half ago, we're only going to be able to do 1 of those buildings at this time. Again, we're pretty much seeing a 50% increase in those costs from where we estimated them a few years ago. So we've made a decision that we're going to proceed with Duffy at this point to go to bid. And then we'll postpone the bid of Webster Hill until we have a better understanding of pricing and also what the budgeting is going to look like. But the designs have come along nicely. We have some good solutions there and some really good improvements to those buildings, especially addressing the fresh air situation. So tennis course replacements for both Conard and Hall are in process. They are in the final stages of pouring the concrete for the new tennis courts at both high schools. If you recall, there's 12 courts at each high school. The next step will be fencing. We will be able to play on these courts in the spring. They will not have that final coating on them, though. They will be on bare concrete, which will be painted. So the high schools are aware of that and they're okay with that. But there will be additional work come spring. So we finished up playground paving at Morley and Webster Hill and line striping recently. New projects that we're starting for next summer already. So we're obviously already in the design process and beginning to bid out projects for next year. So auditorium seating replacements at Hall and King Philip are already in process. For those projects, we utilize the State Correctional Industries actually has a program where inmates, the seats are physically removed from the building and transferred to their facilities. And then the inmates work on refurbishing those seats for us, and then they get delivered back to us. So it's a very cost effective and very good program. We've used it many times in the past, and we're always very happy with the results of that. So we're doing flooring replacement at King Philip during this upcoming summer. We're currently finishing restroom renovations at Sedgwick. This is a 2-year phased project. We did 6 different restrooms this summer. We'll do another 6 next summer. We're just finishing up the first phase of that right now. It's a very invasive project because they're stacked up on top of each other. And this is in the older section of the building, if you're familiar with it. So these are almost 100-year-old restrooms that we're dismantling and remodeling. So the other thing that we're doing, working on is the front entrance security improvements at Duffy, as well as doing fresh air there. We'll also be creating that man trap and updating that entrance. So that's really the last major school security improvement that we have to do for our schools at this point. That's the extent of my report. Happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much. And anybody, Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. The supply chain, I feel for you there. It's been part of, and it's different things. You know, it was toilet paper once. Now it was rotors for cars, and maybe it's now this stuff too. So it's constantly evolving. But I did read and see something on TV on the national networks that the supply chain, as far as the shipping comes, the shipping is back to normal. And I was just wondering, you know, when you go out to contract for that and the contractors are having those long delays, is there any way, and even probably costs, is there any way to buy direct or even try to buy a different supply chain and have the contractors do the work versus everything all at once? And you may do that already. I'm just kind of just asking.
Yeah, so we are we have been doing direct purchase of items ahead of time. So for flooring projects last summer, we went ahead and bought the tile ahead of time directly from the suppliers way in advance of it being bid out to a contractor for installation, knowing that it was a long lead time and possible shipping delays and that type of stuff. And even for King Philip, we already have the tile for next summer. So for those switchgear projects, yes, we will go out and do a separate bid ahead of time in order to expedite that because of that 96-week lead time. But there's also other things we can do without, begin those projects, even though it won't be operational because we won't have the switchgear in place, but we can do other stuff that ahead of that and then insert the switchgear later. So we've been talking to our engineers and design professionals about that, how to sequence all those things, taking into account the long delays on some of those items. So yeah, we are looking at every option we can look at. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Carol?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. And Bob, thank you so much for the report. You're always so thorough and specific and really make it easy to understand. I just want to go back to the proposal for the public safety assessment, Tecton. And even though it's the same company, so just help me understand, is it like a different division that focuses on public safety facility assessments? Is that how the proposal was submitted?
Yeah, so Tecton's a fairly large architectural firm, so they have different teams of people that focus on different things. So they have a team that will focus on schools. They have a team that focuses on municipal buildings. This particular team focuses on public safety. So it's really, we had no idea that they had a public safety team. So until they came, submitted and came for an interview. So, and it was just very interesting. So really, they are large enough that they have specialty teams like that. Some firms don't do that. Some firms, they would, people interchange more, but this is just happens to be a niche of theirs. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Leon, did you have any questions or? No. All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll move back to John for the rest of his Public Works presentation.
Thank you, Ben. Again, John Phillips, Director of Public Works. Public Works monthly report has been uploaded. There's a lot of information within it in terms of our work performance data, and happy to report that we're keeping up with our paces, and we're just shy of our key performance indicators of trying to do 80% of our workloads per month. So we're very fortunate there. I do want to draw your attention to the department notables. And so the first thing I'd like to bring your attention to is our FY23 contractor for snow bids. We only received 2 contractors to express interest. What that means in terms of trucks, we're about half of what we need to bring trucks in to plow all of our open contractual routes. And it really comes down to about 6 trucks we're missing at this time. We are working with 2 vendors out there that did not submit bids initially, and but they have plowed with us in the past, and so we're continuing to talk with them. The messaging we're getting back is they've got the trucks, they just don't have the drivers. And that's an industry-wide issue. I'd probably say it even goes beyond Connecticut borders. CDL drivers are at an extreme deficiency right now across all sectors that need CDL employees. So we're certainly concerned about that. It does drive up some of our plow routes north of 16 miles per route. Obviously, that's concerning because it will take a lot longer to do certain routes. To paint the picture a little bit, you'll have to do all 16 miles before you can get back to the first mile of that route. And we make about 4 passes per mile. So it's really a multiplier by 4 of what a route really has in terms of real mileage of back and forth on plowing. So we're watching that closely, and hopefully we can come to terms with the 2 contractors. Although the snowplow operation activities in preparation of winter is on schedule, all the trucks are being preventive maintenance plans are going through them. We bought our salt, as you know, back in June, so we're fully loaded for any early activity, as well as enough material to take us deep into December, hopefully January if winter has a slow start. The challenge with this time of year, when you get weather like this, it's hard to start coming in and rebuilding your truck for winter in preparation of winter, which we normally do in the month of November when you have this kind of weather, because we're still very active in a lot of construction projects and going on a wish list of engineering of drainage projects throughout town, which is a good thing, but we still got to watch the weather closely. Other notable I want to bring attention to is the EVSE RFP. The EVSE is actually the infrastructure, the power charging stations that an electric vehicle would plug into throughout town. That RFP has been released. It's on the street, and we're looking for consultant firms to help us define our strategy, the EV governance, site identification, and just real master planning of our electric charging stations throughout town. The bid closes at the end of the month. I attended the CCM conference at Mohegan Sun on Tuesday. That's the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. There are a lot of EVSE vendors, hardware vendors, as well as engineering firms that are working in this space. I lobbied to each and every one of them, so they have they know it's out there, and several of them responded that they do plan on teaming up and presenting proposals to the town. So we're excited about the types of proposals we'll receive at the end of this month. Another notable that's not listed on there that I didn't have time to upload, but I did want to bring attention to, we did talk about it in our August meeting. And it's at the Sustainable Material Management Grant that we were working on during the summer. The news, if you have not heard, DEP made their official announcement about 10 days ago. West Hartford was named to receive the grant. And so we do look to receive about $110,000 towards the development of a pilot program for diverting organic waste, more specifically food waste at the curb, as well as introducing in the pilot unit-based pricing collecting of our waste. So right now, because the grant became official and we're going to receive it, we're working on our procedures and the program itself. Our playbook, if you would, is what we're calling it internally. We're working with the DEP's contractor, Way Zero, who's the program manager of the grants, to develop that playbook. Once that's developed, we have a resolution and then obviously a grant contract that we'll bring forward to this committee in our December meeting. The resolution will obviously have to be adopted by council, and I believe the grant contract most likely will have to just be signed by the town manager if everybody agrees to the terms of the contract. We're excited about the grant opportunity. It is definitely a move forward opportunity to manage waste in a more meaningful way, to actually reduce the municipal solid waste and really divert materials away from sending our organic waste out of state, where a lot of our waste will be heading now and as well as the future. Connecticut is well positioned to deal with all their organic waste, but the key is getting that diverted from the material solid waste that we do collect at the curb. Also, on the last page of the report, I did provide a quarterly report, a fiscal report for municipal parking. It's for the first 3 months of the FY22. We're doing pretty well considering we're growing slowly to get back to pre-pandemic fiscal levels. August was actually the first month that we saw revenues come in at a pre-pandemic level, so that was exciting. Don't be alarmed by September numbers. September is typically a slower month in the parking industry. Our data, our history on data tells us that, so we're confident that we're not trending in a negative direction on that one. And overall, though, with collecting 1.6 million of revenues, puts us at 90% of our pre-COVID levels. Well, we think that's pretty good considering the impact that the merchants and restaurants have had, and all the changes we've had to do just to deal with the shutdown and the heart of the pandemic process to regroup and rethink how we use the center and our parking operation. And so we hope this trend continues to get back on track and get to FY20 numbers. Happy to answer any questions based on any information that's in the report.
Great. Thank you very much, John. Appreciate your report as always. And open it up for questions. Carol, I know you had a question from the first half of John's report. So
yeah. Thank you, John. Again, you always also provide a very thorough report, and I thank you for that. So my question on the first part of your original report was around the contract for Supreme. And I just wanted you to clarify, I believe you said that their contract already expired,
Yeah,
but it's still sort of like if it's been extended. Is that what it is?
yeah, we're year to year. We had a 5-year
Okay.
contract with Supreme, who does all the operation and maintenance of the facility, and it's really just
Yeah.
primarily yard waste, chunk wood, leaves.
Yes.
So we've been year to year while we've been rethinking what we're going to do on the site. And so what indicated to us where we knew we had to make a change and really shift gears is obviously the changes in the Connecticut waste landscape. And
Mhm.
Supreme did not make a proposal in
Right.
November of 2020. So we knew that we were heading to a completion of this type of work at our site at that point.
Okay. And then the other piece to that was, I know the commercial folk were not going to be able to use, but the residential people, or I should say people, us, will still have access and still will be able to use as usual.
Yeah, while we transition from current operations to obviously the new Material Solutions Center, which is comprehensive, there'll be more opportunity for residents to use drop-off centers. We'll always maintain an area for residents to self-drop materials.
Okay.
It just no longer will contractors in their larger trucks, large capacity vehicles be able to come and tip stuff. Moving forward, when the Material Solutions Center is built out and it's new, again, there'll always be like a 30-yard dumpster can where residents will be able to put their materials in, and we'll transfer that material for processing off-site.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Mark?
Yeah. Thanks, John. So I guess it goes back, my questions go back to the original piece. And I know you have the answers to these, at least or at least a plan for them. So, use the Yukon property for the catastrophic events. And until that gets developed, is there any potential use for that, like renting it? And because, knowing that you're going to have to transport X amount of truckloads, that mileage times, you don't have anything on the north side, that's going to get quite expensive on fuel and wear and tear on your trucks and all kinds of things. So I don't know if there's any catastrophic plan to use that, or potentially Eisenhower, where some of those commercial private trucks park over there. And so just kind of maybe walk me through that, or us through that, if.
Well, it's a great question, Mark. If you asked me that question back in June, I was probably worried because Yukon is obviously being used we use the parking lot. We didn't use really the building site, the east side, the west side rather. We use the east side of the property, and we always, historically, we use that parking lot. But as you know, St. Francis is using the entire parking lot for their operations. During the peak of our, storm season, it did worry me because I probably didn't have an alternative, a large footprint alternative, and we would probably have to scramble. But now that we're into November, we're probably past any real threat. We still maintain a snow dump, although be it small, down at Public Works, and that's that Dexter Avenue property that we do lease from. I have a lease agreement with Charter Oak Construction. By time we get into the next the threats of larger storms where there's catastrophic damage, potential catastrophic damage, the site should be capped already and readily available for that swing space to have emergency use for it. As far as the mileage goes, actually we'll be, there's certainly mileage from north end of town down to Brixton Street will have an impact on the storm because of the locations. That's just something we'll have to deal with because the West Hartford is so built out. We don't have too many other locations or choices. And then seeing the preliminary plans coming through DRAC, I don't think there's any plans to leave large open areas for a catastrophic material management site to develop if a storm were to hit. I think we're going to be in good shape. Yeah, there'll be increased costs and mileage on our trucks during that catastrophic storm, but we're also for hauling out to disposal from that site. We are still pretty well connected to the highway system, so there should be no impact there.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for John? Leon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, I have 3 different questions. We traditionally pick up Christmas trees and wreaths and greenery in January. Will we be doing that again this year?
Yes, again, the activity at the landfill will not affect any town services that we provide, whether it be the fall or the winter. I know I only mentioned the fall, but no, we still will pick up Christmas trees. But what we'll most likely transition to, instead of processing on the site, we'll bring them down there. We will transfer them to somebody else to process.
And then my second question is, in the past, we've had special cardboard drop-offs right after the holidays to minimize putting it in the blue bin. Do we anticipate offering that service again this year?
We do. It's the community is well received, even people with permits, and you can use the facility 6 days a week, and you continue to use it even through the holidays. It is a program that just sparks people to do something on a Saturday. So we'll continue to run off of that program, and then, you know, weather permitting, between the holidays, and collect that larger scale cardboard material. Yes.
And my last question, thank you for the parking revenue information. That was quite helpful. And I've already talked to the manager about this, but going forward with respect to parking plans in our different districts, and I think this is going to need a coordinated effort between planning, zoning, your department, a few others. And what COVID has done is changed the landscape with respect to parking in terms of pickup. You know, you pick up your items at the different facilities, whether it be restaurant takeout, or you're going to a business to pick up whatever you may have purchased online, and you're just picking that up. So I think we have to think be forward thinking as to particular zones or areas, especially in the center, where it's safe for people to make these pickups. I explained to the manager, I was dining outside one night, and people were just parking, double parking in the middle of the street. They were parking. They were parking in hash areas. They were just making U-turns. It was really a disaster in the making. So I understand people's unwillingness to pay to park to pick up their takeout, and I get that, because they think they're only going to be there for a few minutes. But we have to somehow account for that, because that is part of our numbers with respect to parking. Right. So I think we have to look at that. And then the only other thing on the parking is I presume soon the outdoor dining corrals will be removed, and there's got to be an impact to what each space generates with respect to revenue. So we should be able to have that as we formulate next year's budget, if we're going to continue the plan or expand the plan, or whatever we're going to do with that. So those are things that I think will be quite helpful for the council to understand. This is how many spaces were used by this particular restaurant entity. This is how much was this one. This is basically how much a parking space generates. Okay. And I think we really need to get a better understanding. I understand that this past year, the restaurants, we didn't charge anybody. They're still coming out of COVID. We understood the necessity to have the outside dining, the vibe that it generates, the draw it makes to our community. But I think we also have to understand that what's the economic impact of providing X amount of spaces, and as we come out of COVID, and trust me, we're still not there in terms of the economics of the situation. But we really need to understand what that value of that space is per entity. And I think we need to get numbers from these particular establishments as to they must have pre-COVID numbers, COVID numbers, and exiting out of COVID numbers with respect to that, so we can really understand the trend as to the value of those spaces to that particular establishment. So I don't know if that made sense or what I was getting at, but I'm certain you in the parking operations, you fully understand all the numbers, because every space can potentially generate X amount of dollars.
Mhm.
And we use these dollars for other purposes. The main funding, one of the other funding sources for the special services district
Mhm.
is the parking fund dollars.
Mhm.
So we really need to understand when we tell somebody, yeah, your space out front of your restaurant's going to be 6 spaces. How much is that, and are they able to contribute a portion for that? You know. So.
Yep.
And John does
David,
have,
you're-
to your point, Council David Off, John does have an exact number. You know, we talked about it this year when we went into our outdoor dining strategy. And again, for reasons that you just outlined, we did not, you know, talk to any of you know, any of our restaurants about any kind of fee or anything like that associated as they're coming out of COVID. But it will be part of our strategy as we come to the council, you know, sometime just after the holidays with our outdoor planning strategy for 23. It will likely include some offset to the parking revenue that we do lose with the outdoors dining spots. So excellent point. And John does have that number. And we'll talk more about it as we formalize that plan for next year.
Thank you. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair, John Phillips, Director of Public Works, Councilman David, you made great points there, and so if I can back up to some of your comments. As a town manager indicated, we do have the numbers, we know the data, though I don't have the data right in front of me, but I do know that on-street parking is the majority revenue stream for the parking operation that supports the entire parking operation, including the Special Development District of Blueback Square. So we're very sensitive to the losses and the changes to the center as far as that goes. As your topic on quick takeout dining, you know, the pickup locations, not just for restaurants, but we have a lot of retailers that still offer, you know, phone ahead pickup for merchandise. That is one of the tasks that we gave Stantec, our infrastructure design team, to look at, because we know that's an issue. Even before the pandemic just exasperated or at least really showed us it up in front. You know, Uber Eats and Grubhubs were growing then, and now they've really grown and hold on to the market. So we do have to accommodate them. We've done some early accommodation. We've made sections on Arapahoe Road as like a wait area instead of waiting or double parking for that ding on your phone to go pick up food. We've given them a wait area. We actually do see people sitting there because we've contacted the providers, the Grubhub providers that this location was provided. And then we also designated 8 spots in each of the surface lots behind the buildings. And I know it's behind the buildings, not so convenient, and they're probably not the most desirable, but they're marked spaces where you can use them for pickup or takeout without having to register, go through the kiosk process. Even though the surface lots offer 30 minutes free parking if you register, these spots avoid, you know, you get to skip that process, and we see those spaces get used regularly for just that purpose. So we're confident that's all working, but I think the demand is greater than what we can provide right now. And again, Stantec know that that's a significant topic that we need to cover in any new design of the West Hartford Center. So hopefully that answers some of your comments that you had or questions you had on what we're doing moving forward.
Thank you, John. So let's move on to the star of the night. Catherine has some good news. I didn't want to jump ahead of her, but we did read the newspaper article today, and there were some very good quotes there. So if you can give people the good news and some of the other items in your report.
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Winograd. This is Catherine Deviney, Energy Specialist for the town of West Hartford. So I didn't see any of the newspaper articles, so thank you for telling me. But before I get to the good news, I'm going to give you a little bit of bad news and tell you we'll get more into it at your next meeting. Today, just to dovetail on some of Bob's information about turning the heat on early, we met kind of our little energy procurement group of town staff with our energy broker and discussed kind of what the energy markets are doing. So we are going to be seeing some increases in heating costs, unanticipated, as you can imagine. You know, upwards of 20% this year. The good news is prices should be coming down next year, but they are not going to come back to what we've seen previously. So I'll have more information on that next month for you guys. When I run some numbers and we're getting closer to budget season. So on to the good news. Yes, as Councillor Winograd was saying, it's, I guess, been in the news that West Hartford has been awarded Sustainable Connecticut's Climate Leader designation. This is for leadership in implementing energy and climate related actions in their program. We're only one of 5 towns, along with Fairfield, Glastonbury, New Britain, and Stratford, to receive that honor. It's a new award this year. I think Rick accepted the award once at the CCM convention last week or earlier in the week, and the award will be presented again at the larger celebration of Sustainable Connecticut Awards that we are hosting in our Town Hall auditorium on November 14th. So I hope many of you can register and come to that event. There'll be lots of other municipalities there who are earning their first certifications, and hopefully lots of first selectmen and counselors just like yourself who you can speak to, all participants in the program. And we're actually in the process of trying to encourage any of the 40 unregistered Sustainable Connecticut towns to join the program and come to the events. So if you guys know any counselors or first selectmen in some of the unregistered towns, and I can send you a list of those, please encourage them to come as well. Just moving on, I wanted to give you an update on, I know you guys are aware of the discussions about the consolidation of some of our commissions. So that is proceeding with the consolidation of the Conservation and Environment Commission and the Clean Energy Commission. The Bicycle Pedestrian Commission will likely remain separate for now. That's the direction we're proceeding at this point in time. So the next step that we've taken is to identify a smaller group of representatives from those 2 commissions who can meet directly with Assistant Corporation Counsel and me and some other staff to kind of put some words on paper as to what a draft ordinance might look like. And then we would bring that back in front of you for consideration before it goes to town council. And then moving on November 9th, as some of you might be aware, this is kind of still a very strange thing to me, but we have a delegation from the Korean Consulate General in New York, a delegation of about 18 foreign nationals from Korea, various environmental officers, sustainability officers who are coming to West Hartford and also to UConn Hartford campus to learn about energy programs and participate in a seminar. This came in through Bernie and the Clean Energy Commission. We're going to be delivering some presentations, and they're particularly interested in our virtual net metering program that was awarded back in 2020, an innovative award from the U.S. Conference of Mayors Climate Protection Award. So I'm still blown away that this is kind of strange, and I think Bernie and I won't believe it until we see the people getting off the bus. Initially we thought this is a complete scam. We vetted it to our best of abilities. But until it's actually happened, I think both Bernie and I are still a little skeptical. So I'm happy to answer questions on that. But moving on, West Hartford, I know a little more good news. West Hartford is getting its first electric vehicle. We had a very immediate and rare opportunity to purchase a vehicle off a lot. That doesn't happen. Usually you have to order an electric vehicle when a certain window opens, and it takes over a year for it to come. But we are going to be buying a replacement van for Nutrition Services. Or actually Nutrition Services is purchasing their own van, and it's very exciting. The town doesn't have an electric vehicle. It'll be nice to get some hands-on experience, see firsthand the reductions in operating and maintenance costs, and that actually should be delivered to us within the next couple of months. So that's pretty exciting. We were awarded a grant, a CMAQ grant, Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Grant, through Connecticut Department of Transportation. I'm not sure that the paperwork for that grant is going to come through in time for this purchase, but the funding is good for a long time. So we may be able to apply those funds to another vehicle replacement in the future. So we won't lose out on those funds. There's a lot of, I've never done a federal grant. There's a lot of paperwork and authorizations that have to be signed off on before you can even spend the money. So it's been a learning process for me. Heat Smart West Hartford is the ongoing energy campaign that the Clean Energy Commission has been working on, funded by a grant from Eversource. We've already met the goals that the program set out to meet, and that was a goal of increasing the home energy solutions, home energy assessments in West Hartford by 10% over normal levels. And in hard numbers, that equated to about 341 visits. And we're going to continue to market the program, but we already met that goal back in October, and we think we should probably get up to about 500, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a comprehensive service, and it could do a lot of good for the homes that those contractors visit. There are kind of, again, delays and long lead times in providing in the contractors. They have a backlog of people in their queue getting through, and then they also have facing the same issues that we're facing with procurement of equipment and people who want insulation and new heat pumps and things like that. So I think it's no different in the residential markets than it is in our commercial markets. We've had a lot of success with a recent mailing we did. This was kind of a first time for us focusing on owners or landlords of 1 to 4 family multifamily houses. We had never targeted that market, and we've gotten a lot of interest and direct phone calls from owners who are interested in participating in their programs for their rental properties. So that's exciting. And then in October, we held an insulation energy efficiency webinar, which was great. I provided a link in my summary, and I'm hoping to find a place to stick that up on our website. It was a fantastic webinar that we invited participants from multiple towns to attend through West Hartford Public Libraries. And I realized I forgot to include it on this summary because it's been a couple of months since this group met. But at the end of September, we also had another event. We had a kind of electric vehicle, e-bike event, and electric lawn equipment event that also had some Heat Smart information and heat pump information at it. I know that Councillor Blank attended it. And we have video of her riding on an e-bike. It was awesome. But it was a very successful event, joint with the farmers market in the town hall lot. And I think people really enjoyed that. Just a few more things to touch on. I listed here that West Hartford is a partner in a much larger, broader research study that was just awarded a $3 million Department of Energy grant to focus on Hartford's Parkville microgrid and kind of predicting outages and being prepared. And we're just a small participant in that project since we have some residential communities that abut that microgrid area in the Parkville neighborhood of Hartford. But that kind of project is an example of grid resiliency and studying grid resiliency. And I know at the last meeting, Councillor Wenningrad asked what the town was doing on resiliency. So I included a bullet here, and I did attach to the agenda the broader report that was done in 2021 as part of a community resilience building workshop for the town. Now, my intent wasn't to get into that report today, you know, and to be clear, I didn't write the report. This was a initial step in a planning process that was available to us free of charge through the Sustainable Connecticut program. The workshop was hosted by the Nature Conservancy, and they compiled this finding summaries of previous planning studies that West Hartford has done over the years, as well as a lot of feedback that was gathered in a very comprehensive workshop held online with various staff and community members in the town. So we can, I just put it out there for your review like right now, and maybe we can talk about it at future meetings.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, that explanation. I made a kind of throwaway comment about resiliency, and you responded by emailing me a 20-page PowerPoint with huge amount of content that kind of shut me up pretty quickly. So I very much appreciate that was done. And if I had seen it before, I'd forgotten it. I don't remember having.
Well, and that was my
before, and it's a lot of work in there. It's a very interesting document.
Yes, and I that was why I circulated it, because I'm not sure it did get circulated, and if so, I apologize for that. So.
Oh no, not at all. It's fascinating though, and again, I mean, it's like a POCD for resiliency. I mean, just with a huge number of recommendations, and I do think in terms of any member looking through for, you know, sort of topics for future meetings, there's definitely there's a lot to think about in there.
Yeah, and I think some of it's already being worked on. You know, there's a lot of stuff about stormwater in there, not necessarily things that I personally keep tabs on. You know, but I think it is a nice planning tool, and I think with climate change and other things, resilience is going to become increasingly more important to all towns. So I think with this report, maybe we're one step ahead of the process.
One thing, and I can't find it, I just looked at when I read it through after you sent it to me. One thing that was interesting, particularly that I hadn't thought about, was the pets, a plan for pets in an evacuation, and of course that's become a huge issue. We've all seen it in other places that have dealt with, you know, flooding and such. And that was interesting, that, you know, whether we have a plan and what that would look like. Big task, but obviously it's one that does, you know, come up a lot and turns out to be, you know, workable, but something that really has to be thought of in advance. So anybody, are you? I think that's the end. Finish with your report.
I just had a few more points on.
Sure, please do. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. It's just on food scrap collections and the ongoing efforts of Catherine Bruns, our recycling coordinator, in the schools. She does have the program up and running again at 5 elementary schools, but the program is in need of community volunteers to make it successful. And she just wanted to extend an invitation to any of you who would like to come visit a school lunch, because it's actually very fascinating to watch the process in action. And then to let you know that she and I met recently with Ann McKiernan, who's the Assistant Superintendent for Administration. or kind of operations within West Hartford Public Schools. She's relatively new to her position, so we just wanted to introduce ourselves to her and explore ways that West Hartford Public Schools and the town could work more collaboratively on sustainability, not only on similar issues maybe, but also working together on communication channels, because the schools are a good conduit to a lot of our families who could benefit from information. So, and then lastly, we just wanted to mention that West Hartford was recently in the news a couple of times, and I included the links for our pumpkin recycling program. And these are just great examples of how we're getting good outreach and awareness out there, and that will serve us well when we go to implementing the Sustainable Materials Management Grant that John was talking about with the curbside food diversion pilot.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions? Leon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So currently in West Hartford, we really don't have any solar fields, just lots of land that are doing solar that you see when you drive up on the Mass Pike. You see just parcels of land that just have solar fields. And I don't know if it's because we as a community haven't given much thought to that, or what the output of that energy could be used for, how we could harvest that to reduce our costs. So, and what made me think about it is I drove recently by a bunch of these, and I said, I never see any of these in West Hartford. So is it something that we're missing out on, that we maybe should long-term look for plots of and parcels of property to encourage these things? Or maybe there's municipal property that isn't being used for recreational purposes, active recreational purposes, or passive recreational purposes, that we could designate particular areas. And I just don't know as to whether or not the investment in installing these, whether or not the rewards from whatever we capture will be greater than the investment. And I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, Bob and Rick can probably talk more about land development than I can. In the past, it has not been cost effective for municipalities to own solar because we can't take advantage of any of the tax credits available for installing solar. So typically most of the solar that we do is through power purchase agreements, where a third-party developer owns and operates the system. Actually, with the new IRA Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, there are some provisions in there where entities like municipalities and other nonprofits who don't have tax liability can actually get a cash payment instead of a tax credit. And that opens the potential to owning more solar for municipalities and people who don't have who don't have tax liability. I have always been told that most of our municipal owned land in town, is used for recreational purposes or is not very suitable for solar. We also do have some restrictions on ground mounted solar in certain zoning areas of town, and that's in our zoning regulations. So we cannot install ground mount solar everywhere in town. There are also some aesthetic and safety issues about doing it in more built up areas. Most of the systems that you see along highways or right of ways or things like that are state owned or utility owned, and they feed directly into the grid. And so that's how those projects work. But it's an option. What we do instead, we do participate in 2 virtual net metering contracts where we are a party to a solar farm, but the solar farm is actually not even in West Hartford. So we are a party to a solar farm in Thompson, Connecticut, and we're about to assign a contract for another solar farm in Torrington. And what happens in those situations is the solar farm is elsewhere, but the value of the solar production is shows up on our utility bills. We put forward what we call our utility accounts as host or beneficial accounts, and they're kind of off takers for the solar.
Oh, thank you for your answer, because I know that we've heavily invested in solar on top of school buildings and municipal buildings. But I was like, okay, so what's the next step? Okay, as a fully developed community, and as we look at redevelopment opportunities, you know, we obviously don't need to have a massive farm of solar panels, but I think it just sends out a different message as a community such as ours that is looking into things like this and exploring these opportunities and possibly succeeding with this. For those who are possibly unsuccessful in brownfield remediation instances and things of that nature, to just make the parcel have some type of productivity that would have a beneficial impact on not only the environment, but also financially with our community. But thank you for your answer. I appreciate it.
And just one more point. So you mentioned brownfields, and I think solar is a perfect use for brownfields, and we're actually going to be looking at it in conjunction with John's project down at DPW on the capped landfill. There's a slope there, which is ideal for solar. So we will be looking at it, that area would be acceptable to put solar there. So we'll be looking at it there. But I think there might be other parcels in commercial areas of town, not town-owned property, but maybe brownfields where solar would be a good use or a good interim use as they look for other potential development opportunities for those parcels.
Yeah, we can take a look at both those potential opportunities from a town-owned perspective. And to Catherine's point, outside of most are used as parks. And I can think of one parcel of property that's town-owned that's not really used for anything right now. We probably have some others I just can't think of. So I'll bring it back to our town planner to see what we have out there available for town-owned land. And then certainly we can explore some of the brownfield, commercial opportunities that might be out there for even purchase, and then turning that into a solar farm. So we'll explore that a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're about at the time for ending the meeting, but do the members have any suggestions for future agenda items that you'd like to bring up? Carol, Mark, now, if any do come up in the interim, please let me know, and I'll be happy to try to get it onto the agenda. Also, I have a potential conflict. Our next meeting is scheduled for December 1st. It's tentative. I have a potential problem with the 1st. And
I'll move that date if it's an issue, Mr. Chairman.
I don't have the full calendar, but does the 8th work, or is there something else scheduled that?
The 8th is open.
Carol and Mark, does that look okay?
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm good.
Why don't we move that to the 8th then? If that's okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And other than that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate everybody for coming out tonight, and for anybody who may have been watching. Thank you for giving us the time.